I think the thing that worries me the most is inequality both within and across countries. And it's something that the financial markets puts aside as a social problem, not really an economic or financial problem. And we risk seeing the issue of inequality gather momentum. COVID has already been the great unequalizer, but rather than go back to where we've come from, we are now creating the dynamics for inequality to worsen and to assume greater importance in disrupting all sorts of things in our society.
Well, let's dive in a little to maybe some of the places that you see it most striking that may worry you the most.
So, of course, we see it in income and wealth, and that has massive economic consequences. A highly unequal society is not an economic healthy society. But the one thing that worries me even more than that, and I'm already worried about income and wealth inequality, is the inequality of opportunity. We know what COVID did to people who had no Wi-Fi at home, who had no computers. We know that school districts, public school districts, lost touch with a lot of their students. And these students risk not only becoming unemployed, but unemployable, which means a lost generation of young people. We're also seeing the aftermath of COVID as we slowly emerge from it, create different dynamics around the world. If you're sitting in a developing country today, you can no longer assume that companies will come to you. The onus is increasingly on us coming to our employer. And that is a real issue when education is lagging, when technology is lagging. So I do worry that we're going to see this massive process get larger if we're not careful.
Do you think that this was a process that was starting long before COVID and exacerbated by COVID? And if so, what was it about COVID that made us much worse now than we were before?
Yeah, I mean, think of we were watching a tragic movie in play mode, and then COVID came along and pressed fast forward, and we got ahead in a major way. So what did COVID do? Well, first, it worsened wealth inequality. And it worsened wealth inequality because the response to COVID involved massive Federal Reserve liquidity injections to boost asset prices. And who owns assets? It's the rich. So if you look at what has happened to the top part of the wealth distribution, people are much better off than they were before COVID. But at the bottom end, that has not happened. Think of people whose jobs have now been displaced by this big step that business has taken to digitalization, who have no financial assets to begin with, so they didn't benefit from what has happened to asset prices. And in addition, they were hoping to buy a house and they've been priced out of the housing market. So suddenly both their actual and potential wealth and income has declined. We already know what it looks like because we've had a taste of it. On the economic side, it looks like insufficient aggregate demand, which is a fancy way of saying that as the rich capture more income and more wealth, they spend less of it. Their marginal propensity to consume is less. The poor tend to consume more. So if the incremental income and wealth all goes to the rich, then you're going to have a problem of demand, which means you're going to have a problem of growth. And we already had a period of so-called secular stagnation. And what my PIMCO colleagues and I call the new normal, where we get low and insufficiently inclusive growth. So we know what that looks like. We know the social consequences. It is culture war, it's alienation, it's marginalization. That's not good for a society. It eats away at the fabric of the society. We know what it looks like politically. People become single issue voters, and single issue voters can be captured by all sorts of things. No wonder we're seeing an increase in populism across the world. And then it means a less equal world.
Do you have any prescriptions? Do you have any answers to how we could fix the problem?
Yeah, I think we're seeing it today. I think it's ultimately investing in human and physical infrastructure. It's about enabling people to do more and to do better. It's about providing people with transformational opportunities. It starts at a very early age, at pre-K, exposing bright minds to exciting education and opportunities. It continues throughout the middle school, high school, university, making elite universities more accessible to people who deserve to be there, but shouldn't be held back because they come from the wrong zip code or because their parents have never been to an education. There's a lot that can be done. It's about fundamentally asking the question, how do we enable our resources, human and physical, to be more inclusive and more productive?